All right, this is the third video of the channel, and this time we'll be covering the Auburn Tigers heading into this year. The Auburn Tigers are heading into 2023 with a brand new head coach named Hugh Freeze. They hired him from Liberty University Flames after they had a tumultuous two-year tenure under Bryan Harsin. Bryan Harsin was hired from Washington by the Auburn Tigers in late 2020, and it did not go well at all. After 1 year of being at Auburn, the Auburn boosters were ready to have him fired. Players vocalized their displeasure with him, both on the team and off the team. Coaches left to go other places. Uh, After 1 year, it was just not a good run for Bryan Harsin down in Auburn, and it almost went downhill right away. After 4 games in 2021, Bryan Harsin fired his wide receivers coach because he felt like the performance of the wide receivers did not merit Cornelius Williams, who was the wide receiver coach of Auburn, to maintain his position there. So he fires him after 4 games. Excuse me. And then after a 6-2 start in 2021, Auburn lost their final 5 games for the 2021 season. Final five straight, including the bowl game, to go 6-7. Their first losing record that they had since 2012, which was right before they made the national championship game in 2013 under Gus Malzahn. It was not a good fit at all for Auburn. Uh, After that season, he fired his offensive coordinator. Bo Nix would transfer to Oregon. His defensive line coach left to go to Clemson to coach the same position, and then he had over half a dozen defensive linemen enter the transfer portal afterwards. One of whom went to UCF and was very vocal about his displeasure about his time with Bryan Harsin in Auburn. Several players that left the team alleged that Bryan Harsin was verbally abusive towards them and was very, 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 very disrespectful towards them. Uh, his defensive coordinator that he hired, Derek Mason, who was the former head coach for the Vanderbilt Commodores, left to go join Mike Gundy's staff at Oklahoma State. Um, During the National Signing Day of the 2022 class, Bryan Harsin took a vacation to Mexico, which is never good in the eyes of your college football fan base, especially of your own program when your own head coach is taking a international trip for a vacation when you should be out there on National Signing Day trying to lock in your final recruits that have committed to you and are planning on signing with you, and they won't even be in contact with you because you're taking a vacation in Mexico. It's just not a good look from an optics standpoint. Then in the 2022 season, one cornerback that was a part of his 2021 class would enter the transfer portal mid-season, and 10 of his 18 recruits from that class transferred away from Auburn in less than a 2 year span. And then they went 3-1, but in the 2022 season, Auburn started off 3-1, but their first two victories was against Mercer and San Diego State. So it wasn't really that much of an impressive 3-1 start. And then after they started 3-1, they would go on to lose 4 games right after that to go 3-5. Bryan Harsin was then fired the day after they lost their fourth consecutive game. Uh, Cadillac Williams, who was a former running back of the Auburn Tigers, took over as interim head coach. Auburn will go 2-2 the rest of the stretch, but will go 5-7 and miss a bowl game. It was not a good tenure at all for Bryan Harsin. Um, Ironically, they went from a coach who was polarizing within the program in Bryan Harsin to a head coach that is polarizing throughout college football in general in Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze was the head coach at Ole Miss for some time, but during his time at Ole Miss, he was discovered to have been using escort services and prostitute services to enlist recruits to go to Oxford to play for the Rebels. And then eventually he resigned in 2017 After being away for a few years, he went to go coach the Liberty University Flames. Had a good record there, coached there 49 games, 34 and 15 record. Comes to Auburn. Uh, Despite all the controversy and the bad press that Auburn got for it, they went ahead with the hire, brought him to the program, and afterwards, they, per 24/7 Sports, had one of the best transfer portal classes of the 2023 season, and what the team's getting ready to do is getting ready to take the field in September to take on the UMass Minutemen to start off their season. So here's the schedule right here. I think they're gonna. I mean, it would be a disappointment if they came out of the first three games with a 2-1 record or worse. They should beat UMass. They should beat California. Even though the California game is on the road and it is in another time zone, it is going to be late at night for a team that's used to playing on the southeastern part of the U.S. California has not been a good college football program for quite some time. And even if it is your one, if you're an Auburn fan, I think you should be confident that they can go on the road and beat California. Same thing with Sanford. Uh, they should have an easy victory against Sanford. You have then after that game, Texas A&M Aggies. They're going to be on the road. The Texas A&M Aggies, like Auburn, 5-7 last year, missed the bowl game. Bad year under Jimbo Fisher. Uh, but unlike Auburn, Texas A&M has had the luxury of having good recruiting classes despite underachieving to what their expectations are, and which is competing for the SEC West and being in Atlanta for the SEC title game. Uh, and this game is going to be on the road at College Station at Kyle Field. I think Texas A&M should get a victory here, a nice home victory against Auburn. And then after the Texas A&M game, they have Georgia. I think that's an easy win for Georgia. Georgia's the best program in college football right now. It's not even close. They are where Alabama was in the early 2010s under Nick Saban, and I think I said that in the in the in a recording that I did for another team who you will hear me cover later on. Uh, Georgia right now is a very great program. They're a phenomenal program. They've won back-to-back national championships. They dismantle pretty much everybody outside of Ohio State, and they're just a very good team right now. So I don't have any reason to think that Auburn could beat Georgia, whether it's at home at Auburn or on the road at Athens. I don't see this happening. Georgia just absolutely owning college football right now, and if you're a Georgia fan, that's great news for you to hear. But if you're one of their rivals, which Auburn is a rival of Georgia, it's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. It's the oldest rivalry in the SEC. In the SEC, that's bad news for you to hear. But those are just the facts. Then they get a bye week, and then after that bye week, it does get any easier because they'll be on the road at Louisiana in Baton Rouge to play the LSU Tigers. I think that's going to be another loss for Auburn right there. Playing LSU on the road is tough for any team. I mean, look how tough it was for Alabama last year to go on the road and beat LSU. They were an 11-2 team last year. So that just goes to show how scary it is to play in Death Valley at LSU. Then the week after they have Ole Miss. Ole Miss has been a respectable team under Lane Kiffin. They've had great transfer portals. They've had good offenses under Lane Kiffin. He's one of the best offensive minds in college football. He's a unique personality, and he has a unique aggressiveness to how he coaches on the football field. Not afraid to go for it on fourth down. Well, does believe in throwing the ball down the field vertically, consistently throughout the game. It's going to be a tough matchup for Auburn. It's gonna sound like I'm picking on them a little bit, but I have another loss here. I think just playing Ole Miss is just a very tough team for them to beat. Then I'll have them bounce back with a victory against Mississippi State. Then have them go on the road and beat Vanderbilt. Uh, I respect the progression that Vanderbilt seems to be taking under their current coach Clark Lee, but I think Auburn can go on the road and beat Vanderbilt and just you know try to right the ship after losing four against Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss. Oh, and excuse me, losing to Texas A&M, Georgia, LSU, and then Ole Miss. I think they can round off a couple of wins here. Then they're going to be on the road to play Arkansas. Arkansas uh, had a bit of a down year last year in 2022 after they were a respectable 8-14 in 2021. They lost some key players and lost some key coaches in 2022. So it's kind of hard to buy into Arkansas being much better than what they were last year. And because of that, I think Auburn can pull off another win here and beat Arkansas. And then they have their the game before the Iron Bowl and New Mexico State Aggies. That should be another easy victory for Auburn. So right now they have a 7-4 record, which is a winning year. It's a winning year for Auburn. And the previous year you were 6-7. So having 7 victories in the regular season after you were 6-7 the last, 5-7 last year and 6-7 the year before that. 2021 you had a losing record. 2022, not only did you have a losing record, you didn't even make a bowl game. So the fact that you're 2 wins above where you're at last year should be a great sign of improvement if you're a fan of War Eagle. And then you have the classic Iron Bowl rivalry. Some people view the Iron Bowl as the best rivalry in college football. Me personally, myself, if you had to ask me, how would you rank the top 3 rivalries in college football? I would put the Iron Bowl third behind Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma at number 2, and then number 1 being the game, Ohio State and Michigan. Uh, and anytime Auburn and Alabama play each other, you can always expect fireworks. Uh, 2021, the Auburn Tigers were a bad team last year, but they were still close to pulling off a big upset against Alabama, who was ranked, I believe, in the top 5 at the time of that game. Auburn had a chance to get one more first down, run out the clock at late in the fourth quarter, but they could not get that extra first down that they needed. They had to punt the ball to Alabama. Alabama drives the ball down 95 yards down the field, gets a game time touchdown, has to go to a few more overtime, has to go to a couple of overtimes. I think it was about 2 or 3 overtimes, but they still end up winning the game, and it was one of the best endings of a college football game that year, and it was another great chapter to the rivalry that is the Iron Bowl. But even though I have Auburn having a better year in 2023, I don't think they're going to be much better enough to beat Alabama. I think Alabama will win that, so that will give Auburn a 7-5 record with losses to Texas A&M, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, and then I think they're going to lose all the way at Alabama at the end of the season. Uh, Never good to lose to Alabama if you are an Auburn fan, but hey, you were 7-5 the previous year. You didn't make a bowl game the previous year. You were 6-7. So to be 7-5, maybe you have a chance to win your bowl game and get that 8th win. I think that would be a good year for the Auburn fan base. I know I would be happy with that if I was an Auburn fan, being that it's Hugh Freeze's first year. I will say if Auburn expects to be better this year, they need better quarterback play from either Peyton Thorne, who was a transfer from Michigan State, or Robbie Ashford, who was on Auburn last year. They need better play from those guys. I think having Hugh Freeze, who, as controversial as he is a great offensive mind. He's proven to make teams better everywhere he coaches, whether if it was at Arkansas State, Ole Miss, or at Liberty. They get better with him as their head coach. Maybe you don't necessarily like his methods, but the results do show for themselves. He makes teams better. And if you're an Auburn fan, that's really all you can concern yourself about. All the stuff in the past, Auburn looked past it and said, you know what, despite your history, we're going to take a chance on you, bring you back to the SEC because we need you to win games for us. And we need you to get us to competing for the SEC, every which is what every Auburn fan should be hoping for. You want to compete for the SEC because you can see Alabama, as great as they are, you can start to see they're starting to be on a downward trend. They're not looking like the Alabama that we grew accustomed to throughout the 2010s decade. And Nick Saban is not going to be at Alabama forever. In Alabama, when they fall off, if you're an Auburn fan, you want to be ready to pounce when that happens. So this is my prediction for them: 7-5. They make a bowl game, they get a winning record, and year one for Hugh Freeze, I would say, goes quite smoothly.